magazine. He had me come in and speak to the 10,000 kids there at Liberty University. He had me on his broadcast. He was on my broadcast. I regularly wrote for his newspaper. People like Falwell lived long enough to see where we were going, but can you imagine what he would say? Can you imagine what Adrian Rogers would say? And he died, 21 years ago, this fall. Can you imagine what D. James Kennedy would say? They knew it was going this way, but boy, I think it's gone well beyond what they even thought would happen. What's the point I'm trying to make here? We have tried everything we can to try to get this republic back on track. And right now, all we're trying to do is slow this train down because this train is headed for a bridge, and the bridge is not there. It's gone. There is no support system. It's gone. There's nothing but a cavern. And the bridge being gone and the train running is headed off the tracks into the cavern. It's a deep, deep gorge. And right now, all we're trying to do is slow the train down a little bit. Buy some time. That's it. That's really the best we can do, folks, is buy some time. And many, many Americans are coming to this realization, and many of them are saying, if that's the best we can hope for is just to slow the train down before it goes off the track and into the gorge, then what is the meaning and purpose of everyday life? We're certainly not building the kingdom of God here on earth. I don't care what Rick Warren or Paula White or Doug Phillips tells you. And that's why many are coming here. Doug Wilson. That's why many are coming here, because they realize it's only understanding the gospel, a biblical worldview, Bible prophecy that puts it all together, gives us hope and a purpose and a mission statement, not the great conquest, but the Great Commission.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
They had to report back, these federal air marshals who were surveilling me, about my appearance, about what kind of electronic devices that I had in my possession. Did I have any interactions with unknown individuals while traveling?
Did the Biden administration spy on Tulsi Gabbard? Senator Rand Paul says yes. He's accusing the White House of using federal air marshals to secretly track Gabbard.
Just last night, I received the first set of records from the department regarding Tulsi Gabbard's placement on the TSA Quiet Skies watch list. These documents confirm our suspicions. Federal air marshals surveilled the now Director of National Intelligence.
This allegedly happened in 2024. Gabbard was a private citizen then. Paul claims these marshals reported on her appearance and even what she was doing with her electronics on domestic flights. Gabbard says she was targeted for speaking out. She believes the government weaponized law enforcement against her. The claim, combating domestic terrorism. Paul wants to know if others were spied on, demanding accountability. Now, here's the twist. Gabbard is now Director of National Intelligence. She's vowing to end the politicization of intelligence and overhaul TSA practices.
Good afternoon, America. Welcome to Whistleblower Wednesday on the Rob Maness Show. And we're live on Worldview 2 and our X Spaces simulcast. And I think we've got a stream on X Spaces simulcast. Even the video stream's working on X today, which is a small miracle. Well, this is the day we honor the brave patriots who stand up for truth, transparency, and the safety of our nation. Today, we're celebrating the incredible work of our federal air marshals, the unsung heroes who keep our skies secure every single day. These dedicated men and women have saved countless lives through their vigilance, including protecting vulnerable children right here in our airports and on our flights. Their courage and commitment should inspire us all. And we're seeing real progress as more light is shown on these vital efforts that they're conducting. We're also highlighting important stories that remind us how essential strong, accountable aviation security is for every American family traveling with peace of mind. From shining a spotlight on abused programs like you just saw, Operation Quiet Skies, now thankfully reformed under new leadership, I hope, to recognizing the frontline role air marshals play in combating human trafficking and ensuring our borders and skies stay safe. The dedication of these professionals is making every difference in the world. That's why I'm absolutely thrilled to have as our guest a true champion for our federal air marshals and for America's security, retired supervisory federal air marshal and executive director of the Air Marshal National Council, a philanthropist, award-winning executive producer of Unseen, Unheard, Unafraid, and a fearless advocate for transparency and reform, the remarkable Sonia Labasco. Sonia, welcome to the Rob Maness Show. Now, I think I read that it was your group that blew the whistle on the Quiet Skies program. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Colonel Maness, and thank you so much for highlighting the great work that we've been doing for the last 25 years in the Federal Air Marshal Service. But it was my group. I had a group of air marshals that called me the very first trip that they were assigned to follow then Lieutenant Colonel Tulsi Gabbard. She was actually reporting to guard duty. We actually followed her to her duty station and surveilled her. So when they called me, of course, I was like, well, maybe it's an anomaly, right? Sometimes things can happen. We just can't explain. So the first mission, we said, we'll wait and see. So then the second mission with Miss Gabbard occurred. And I was like, well, after 3 missions, usually, you know, if there's something that's not right, it will drop off and we would not follow somebody on Quiet Skies. But we went from the 3rd mission with Miss Gabbard to the 4th mission, to the 5th mission, to the 6th mission. And then we cried foul. We said, this is absolutely egregious. She's a decorated combat veteran. There's no reason for her to be on the domestic terrorist Quiet Skies list other than she actually did an interview. I know it's ridiculous, right? With Laura Ingram.
I know.
You know, and then mysteriously after that interview with Laura Ingram, she ends up on the, domestic terrorist list for TSA.
Yeah. I chose that clip, even though it's old, but I get a chuckle out of it thinking that she wakes up as the director of national intelligence, which oversees that program now every single morning today. And I think there is some justice in the world.
Well, if there was ever any karma, that would have been it in our world that circulated back. I mean, to take a decorated military veteran and try to run her through the meat grinder, not only her, but her family as well, by the way. Her family was placed on that list. It just wasn't her. So it is great to see her doing really great work for our country, bringing the transparency that we need to end these egregious programs. So we're very proud of the work she's doing.
Now, if I'm correct on this, that program was established after 9/11 under the TSA to try to prevent another 9/11. Is that accurate?
Well, it was actually, it's semi-accurate. When it got started in 2012, it was under Obama. So when Quiet Sky started, we were actually doing true intel. These were special mission coverages where we received a secure brief, right? We were briefed by the FBI in regards to someone that was actually on the terrorist watch list. Well, what happened during the Obama administration, TSA realized that they could go to Congress and utilize this program to show that we were following all of these individuals and get more money in our budget. So as the years drew on, this program became domestic overreach, that we were not getting the briefings from the FBI on the individuals that we were following. We just began following individuals to make it look like we were doing this broad mission, looking for domestic terrorists here in America.
Yeah. And am I correct in what I think I know is that this program was also, I mean, Miss Gabbard was just the most well-known person that the average citizen knows about, but was this program used to spy on just regular Americans that happened to be involved in something that the other parties' political powers didn't like January 6th?
Well, we saw the really political swing and the pendulum swing with this program after what happened on January the 6th. Then Mr. Benny Thompson sent a letter over to the TSA administrator because we, as the Federal Air Marshals, just to break it down, we are a law enforcement component stuck inside this huge administrative agency. So we are the only gun toters in the agency that carry under 49 USC. That's our body that governs our duties as air marshals. But Benny Thompson sent a letter over to then Administrator David Pekoski, and he wanted to know what Pekoski was going to do to disrupt the travel of the white supremacists and the domestic terrorists that had been at the National Capital Region during January the 5th through the 7th. So at that point, the dog whistle got called. Pekoski changed our entire mission within the Federal Air Marshal Service. We had never seen anything like it in our entire career. And we began following and watching individuals that were in the National Capital Region January the 5th through the 7th, whether they were at the Capitol or not. They could have just visited the National Capital Region on a vacation, job interview, funeral, wedding, you name it, and they were added to this list.
Did any of the marshals at the individual level object to this type of activity?
Yes, sir. This is the one thing we do in the Air Marshal National Council. Fortunately, I'm retired, so I'm out. So they bring me a lot of information. We have the pulse every day of what's happening across this nation, both domestically and internationally, in our aviation security. So ground level air marshals, they were very upset about this. They brought this to their upper management, and you can only imagine the moment you put something in writing, the retaliation you're going to receive internally. I mean, you were in the Air Force. You understand what I mean when you start documenting things that you think are a violation of the Constitution. You quickly become public enemy number one within the rank and file. So we had many that were protesting. They brought a lot of it to me. Of course, you've seen Rand Paul's congressional hearings that he's had. He's really dug into this, and he's been a champion for the air marshals to bring this forward and showcase. But yes, we actually, during the time back in 2021 through 2024, we were instrumental in helping getting Mayorkas impeached. The federal air marshals were, with the information that we brought to the oversight committees. And we were super excited that he was impeached in the House because of all the treasonous actions that he had committed against our country. And then, of course, the Senate, they voted to let him off. And that was very disappointing. But we have been in this battle ever since we've seen this pendulum swing, that no risk assessment was done to take the air marshals off the aircraft that we were already flying. High probability for an incident to occur. We were just removed off of those aircraft with no risk assessment and assigned because Benny Thompson wanted us there.
Yeah, because I mean, the air marshals aren't just assigned to fly on a flight because there's intel that there's a terrorist on board or somebody on the watch list, right? I mean, it's a random selection. There's a randomness to it too, isn't there? In addition to the identified flights, and I'm very comfortable with that. I like knowing that there's possibly 2 air marshals on my plane every time I go fly.
Yeah, and then we travel. Yes, sir. That's still very accurate. It's random because it's picked on the size of the plane, East Coast, West Coast. If we look what happened at 9/11, all those flights were large body aircraft. They were going East Coast to West Coast, so they had a large amount of fuel. So the random selection is based on things of that nature, East Coast to West Coast. We know that DC was a target on there as well with the Pentagon. So you got to look at some of the larger areas that we cover more on the eastern ridge. I was based out of Orlando, so the eastern seaboard was, a part of our trips every day from Orlando to DC and back, because that was an area that we had to ensure going into the National Capital Region we had coverage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the National Council itself, how long has it been around? And what other functions do you provide besides just the whistleblower function?
Well, we're actually a professional association. We're not a union. We're a professional association with retirees and current federal air marshals. We started in 2019. We were getting really concerned because of the air marshals. Some of the things that are happening internally is we're not regulated for our flight schedules. So the FAA regulates pilots and flight attendants regarding their rest time, but the air marshals have none. The Aviation Transportation Security Act back in 2001, when Bush announced that, gave the TSA administrator near dictatorial powers in regards to our scheduling. So we started that to try to make some of the quality of life changes internally for the air marshals. And we started working on some of those issues as well. But we provide legal services if there's a shooting or any type of critical incident, we have legal coverage for that. We have coverage for workers' compensation if you get injured on the job. Unfortunately, if you're injured severely and you have to retire, we handle that with the Office of Professional Management. So we do a lot of internal things for the workforce itself, on top of now taking on this monster, after January the 6th, and to watch our mission be so just depleted the way that it was for nothing more than political gain.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought there. I had a question I wanted to ask you. The air marshals themselves, when we're talking about this organization that you have, it's not a lobbyist organization, right? You're not a bunch of lobbyists getting big bucks,
No,
right?
sir. No, sir. Absolutely not. We were formulated because of what happened at 9/11. The air marshals that I work with today, we all came over right after 9/11 in 2001, and we said never again on our watch. So we band together. We're a group that is concerned about national security. We're concerned about our aviation security. And we're there for America. We're not lobbyists. We're not looking to do anything other than to make aviation the best and the most secure we can for American people. We don't ever want to see 2,977 Americans murdered on American soil ever again after 9/11. So our goal number one is for America and the safety of America.
Yeah, somebody that was in the Pentagon on 9/11 and whose entire life and family's life had to change because of it, and flew my first flight on September 30th, 2001 afterwards. I definitely appreciate that y'all have done this and are taking care of this force, because this force, while it might have existed pre 9/11, it has become really the bulwark of preventing this from ever happening again. And you have lived up to what you swore to do, Sonia. Well, we got to take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about, I don't know. I think we're talking about countering human trafficking amongst the federal air marshals. This is amazing. I wasn't aware of how involved they were, but Ms. Labasco will tell us about this mission. It's pretty incredible.
What if millions around the world could access Bible teaching and worldview training for free right now without hitting a paywall? That's exactly what happens every day at worldviewtube.com because of the Worldview Weekend Foundation. We don't lock our live stream behind PayPal. We don't restrict our content to members only. Instead, the Worldview Weekend Foundation helps cover the cost of delivering free educational and ministry programming to people across the nation and around the world. And it's not just programming. My Sunday night church service, where I taught verse by verse through Revelation for 18 months, and now I am teaching through the book of Daniel, is made possible through the support of our church, Worldview Weekend Foundation. If you believe this kind of truth-centered biblical teaching must continue, donate today. Go now to worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address and phone number there if you'd rather give by phone or mail. That's worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you.
Human trafficking is a widespread problem in the United States. My name is Monty Cooper Jr. I am a federal air marshal assigned to the Center for Countering Human Trafficking. Human trafficking involves the force, fraud, and coercion of an individual to commit illegal acts such as sex trafficking, forced labor, things of that nature. At the Center for Countering Human Trafficking, it involves every component of Department of Homeland Security and the fight against trafficking. A lot of traffickers transport their victims via aviation. Aviation personnel will be on the front line to fight human trafficking. Just being visible at the airport and just looking out for things that kind of pique your interest. Some of the common indicators are someone who's being forced to do something beyond their control, not being able to have control over their particular belongings, their identification documents. Everyone should have the mindset to get involved. It starts on the front line. Once you make that tip, law enforcement comes into play to investigate. But it starts with the regular person that's transversing the airport or taking a bus or taking a train. Your tips matter more than anything.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday again, and my guest today is Executive Director of the Air Marshal National Council and former Supervisory Federal Air Marshal Agent, Sonia Labasco. And Sonia, the aircraft space and airports are unique environments. I would imagine that the training that's given to our federal air marshals to counter human trafficking, especially child sex trafficking, have to be really, really good, because you're in a very, especially on the aircraft, you're in a very confined space, and those normal markers that you might have heard in some of that in the video there may or may not exist. What can citizens that are travelers do to spot this potential stuff like the air marshals are looking for?
Well, Colonel, one thing they can do, I mean, when you're traveling, you're in an unusual place and you're not aware of your surroundings, especially moving through the airport. But you can
Yeah.
look at people's behaviors. If you look at, let's say, for example, you have a small child, and that child, let's say 6 or 7 years old, they're not looking at the adult they're traveling with. There's no interaction that would be of a normal um, family type situation. Pay attention to what's going on there. A lot of the time, the victims of human trafficking, and I work very well with many. I'm a mentor for human trafficking in Central Florida, so I do a lot of work. I've done that for 6 years in this arena. Is to pay attention to the surroundings, and if something doesn't feel right, go to the ticket counter, go to the gate agent, have them make a phone call to every airport has a police department. Have them make a phone call for the police department to come over and check it out. I had rather be wrong and say something than not say something and realize later on there's a news article to where this child was trafficked. So you can just pay attention to your surroundings and take some action. I'm not telling you to get involved, but please be aware. This can happen when you're at the rental cars, anywhere that you're at and traveling. Just be aware when you're in the airport, especially was based out of Orlando. 60 million passengers. If you can only imagine how many individuals are moving throughout that airport every day, and they're never paying attention that could be an illicit, movement through the airport of someone trafficking women, children, and men as well.
Yeah, I live in Gulfport, Mississippi, and our airport is just a couple of miles off of the I-10, east-west I-10. In New Orleans, it's just an hour to the west. In Florida, an hour to the east. So we're a major pathway for human trafficking between these types of locations on the ground. And I can see people. I can see that in my mind's eye, that be dumping into the Gulfport International Airport very easily, or out of there by bringing kids in and young women in. The Air Marshal Service themselves, how much of the force is dedicated to that, or is this a broad mission for every Air Marshal, or are there specialists in this area?
Well, we get regular training. We're part of the DHS Blue campaign as well. You'll see a lot of DHS Blue campaigns in most of the airports across the nation. So we do receive some specific training regarding working with the flight crews, and the flight crews are also, trained on human trafficking as well. They've done a very good job to get their personnel, what we call the stakeholders, trained in this as well, because at the end of the day, we have 40 million people that are trafficked. It's a $236 billion business, and the commodity is a human being. So it's going to take everyone paying attention to try to help combat human trafficking. But we do have special, they're called task force officers. They're assigned to HSI. They're actually a dual role. They're a federal air marshal, but they're also working with Homeland Security investigations under task force for, child exploitation. And our task force officers across the nation have done a brilliant job working to combat, and not only prosecuting those that were involved, but also recovering children. We just had one of the largest successful Bring Children Home mission back in October of 2025 in Central Florida, we were able to work with the U.S. Marshal Service and bring 122 missing children back to a safe location. So we're very proud of the work that we're doing in regards to human trafficking.
I'm glad you brought up the U.S. Marshals because I'm more familiar with their task force that they use to combat child trafficking and human trafficking. What is the linkage between the Federal Air Marshal Service and the U.S. Marshal Service? Is there anything formal, or is it more a informal coordination?
It's more of an informal. We would like to make it more formal. We would love to see a memorandum of understanding with all the Federal Air
Mm,
Marshal's offices. So we have 20 offices nationwide at major airports, and it depends on the special agent in charge of that field office whether they want to cooperate or work with the U.S. Marshal Service. So I think there's a greater partnership that we could receive there between that both agencies, DOJ and DHS, because at the end of the day, it's about providing the resources to recover these children. We know there were over 1 million children brought in the last 4 years under the Biden administration for the unaccompanied children's program. So we know those kids are out there and they're just waiting on somebody to come and find them. So let's keep the temperature up to try to make sure these partnerships are happening at the federal law enforcement level and every available resource is given to this, egregious crime.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's still over 300,000 that are unlocated. Of the, I think there were about 760-ish thousand kids that were designated as neither not located or missing of that million or so. And you guys and the U.S. Marshals and ICE and the Border Patrol and all law enforcement really have done a fabulous job once it got focused on tracking these kids down and figuring out where they're at and recovering them. I think it's phenomenal. It's just scary being a dad and a granddad. I'm sure you feel the same way. You're thinking about your kids and grandkids, and all these children are missing, and most of them are being exploited in one way or another.
And it is really sad, Colonel, because a lot of them don't speak English. They're from other
Hmm.
countries.
Yeah.
They're from Ecuador, they're different, Venezuela, different countries. They're here, and their parents sent them here, maybe not knowing what was going to happen, but they're here now, and we have to do the best. Children, no matter where they're from, they're our children. Okay, children are innocent, and they have nothing to do with any political pendulum that's swinging in our country right now over deportations or things that are happening. We should
Hmm.
never allow our children to go in a situation when they're being trafficked in the way that they are now. So we keep
Yeah.
praying every day that we're going to bring all those kids into a safe location and help them get out of the destitute and the situations they're in. Because working with survivors, I have to tell you, the stories are pretty mortifying.
Yeah, and I imagine the agents themselves are traumatized sometimes. Is there a program to help them deal with what they have to see and interact with in this particular program?
Yes, sir. Colonel Maness, we contract with Under the Shield based out of Arizona. Under the Shield is for military, first responders, firefighters, law enforcement, and they provide counseling service or coaching sessions. It's long term. Usually in the government, you'll get 3 sessions that are provided by the EAP. It's a contract service. So the Air Marshal National Council has contracted internally. So any federal law enforcement officer, you don't have to be a member of our association. We will provide those resources for you to reach out to Under the Shield so you can talk about the things that you've witnessed. When you're going into some of these locations and you're finding children in cages that are tied up and the things that have happened to them, of course, any human being that's functioning is not going to be able to just go on with life after you see these things that have happened like that. So yes, we provide that resource as well.
Yeah, and do the air marshals as a group have challenges like veterans do with suicide and post-traumatic stress, those kinds of issues?
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, with the air marshals, we've buried 24 to
Mm.
suicide. We've been around for 25 years, and about one a year we're losing, and we're doing the best that we can to try to provide those resources. But it is a struggle. A lot of the veterans that do come back and they go to work with the Federal Air Marshal Service, some of them, they've deployed in combat regions, Afghanistan and Iraq, and they've just seen the most horrendous things. So we're glad to be that bridge for individuals when they need it, and we stay long term. A lot of our air marshals, we've been with Under the Shield since 2019, and this is what I love about this organization is they can stay with them. They have a stress coach. We also have professional doctors if needed on staff, and they can stay with them from the day that they call all the way through their career. So there's no ending time for you to receive counseling, and also for not only the officer but for their family as well. You know, anything that impacts you on the job, when you walk through the door at night, it's going to impact your family. So we counsel the entire family unit because we believe in keeping the family unit together.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's a family affair. I mean, it's, when I first went through my treatment, my wife was invited to come with me, the very first doctor that we ever saw, because it's important for the veteran, the individual, to hear from their loved one, especially their wife, who's, in my case, my wife, or your spouse, because they're the closest person to you. And they see things that you can no longer see. They hear things that you can no longer hear, that you're probably missing, at least at the beginning of the treatment. So that's fantastic. Well, this is a pretty scarce resource, right? How large is the Federal Air Marshal Service?
Well, when we started after 2001, after 9/11, prior to 9/11, there were only 33 air marshals, and we only deployed on international missions. So after 9/11, it taught us a lot of things. You know, the hijackers took all domestic bound missions, so it changed our mission then. And the agents at the TSA, we sprung up to about 4,000, and that's open source. I know the number's
Hmm.
classified, but
Yeah.
this is open source information I'm discussing. We sprung up to around 4,000. And I have to tell you, in today's world, we need to go back somewhere in a higher number because we're nowhere near that number today.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in the next segment because I saw this story about how some agents are flying for ICE, and some of them may be even flying unarmed on some of these missions. And we have to protect this resource. I mean, the arming of any agent is in many ways a self-protection tactic too, in addition to an ability to take down a criminal, especially a violent one that may be hurting the public or hurting somebody else, or trying to hurt your partner, those kind of things. It's a self-protection device, arming agents. And the craziest thing that I've heard is seeing air marshals on aircraft with full of bad guys, unarmed. It's nuts. And wait till you see this video clip coming in. We'll be right back with Sonia Labasca.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.
Kate, you know, air marshals are federal law enforcement officers highly trained to stop another 9/11 style attack on board a commercial passenger plane. But now the Trump administration has reassigned about 200 of them so far to do security, as you mentioned, on these ICE deportation flights. Now, air marshals are mostly unarmed on these ICE flights. And according to internal documents and communications, their duties include serving snacks to detainees, bathroom escorts, pat downs, and one group that advocates for air marshals says they're also doing lice checks and trash removal. Now, the administration has tapped federal employees from across the government to help pull off this aggressive immigration crackdown. all while the data shows that the number of ICE flights have shot up some 34% since Trump took office. Now, the TSA, the agency that oversees the Air Marshal program, tells CNN, quote, Air Marshals are proud to assist their ICE colleagues by providing in-flight security functions on these flights. But one group that represents Air Marshals says the move is putting commercial aviation at risk. The Air Marshal National Council sent a cease and desist letter to DHS and filed a complaint with the agency's inspector general to stop the use of air marshals on these ICE flights. And adding to the controversy, Kate, the group argues that air marshals are essentially supplementing the security workforce of a private contractor that's already being paid by the federal government to provide security on board. We did ask about air marshals' duties as far as taking out the trash, these lice checks, and handing out sandwiches on these deportation flights. TSA did not respond to those questions, Kate.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and my guest is the executive director of the Air Marshal National Council, Sonia Labasco. And Sonia, there's a lot of little things in that clip there, but the biggest one that jumped out to me when I heard about the story was the Air Marshals flying unarmed. I mean, these individuals, these Americans that are agents on the Federal Air Marshal Service, have to be the best marksman trained individuals in the world, really, because of the environment and that cylindrical cigar shaped tube full of people there, right? Why would they not arm them? And what's the council's position on all that?
Well, what you saw in that clip, I knew there was some, CNN, there's always some things you got to question and how they coined that. But for the most part, 70% of that is absolutely correct. Because we're part of DHS, and I think one of the biggest issues, Colonel, that lies here is that we, as the Federal Air Marshals, are inside this TSA administrative unit. TSA does not really want the Federal Air Marshals armed in the first place. They tried to take our weapons when we were deployed under Biden down at the southern border. So we fought this battle with TSA more than once. They tried to take our weapons when they deployed us to the southern border, wanted the Border Patrol to say we could not have weapons on any of the compounds we were working. And we beat that issue. But here we are. Let's fast forward now. TSA is doing the same thing. I do not believe that President Trump knows that the Federal Air Marshals have been disarmed. I do not believe that he knows that. But what TSA has done, they've nestled us in because we're part of DHS. And they said we're doing dual roles. We're going to be EROs, that's enforcement and removal officers under the ICE statute. Now, ICE cannot carry firearms on an airplane because they're not authorized to do that. But you're using Federal Air Marshals in that same vein. And the problem that the Air Marshals have, it's not that we don't want to help with deportations or help, make sure our aviation is safe, but you're taking a resource that's already depleted. Our resources have not been built up in the last 5 years. We need to start building those resources. So when you're taking 200 Air Marshals and you're taking their weapons away from them and you're putting them on these aircraft where, as you said, these are some of the worst, you're not really doing the right thing by, number one, our aviation security. We can't destabilize our aviation security for deportations when you're paying a contract company to do these duties. And everything that was said in that report is true. The Air Marshals were doing lice checks on the tarmac. They're handing out sandwiches and cookies. They have leg shackles when they go on the aircraft. They're taking those leg shackles off. These individuals are unrestrained during some of these long flights, and it's quite a dangerous situation. And we really should not be put in the position that we have to come out and make this known on a national scale. But the only way to change it is for someone to recognize this is wrong and it should be stopped.
Yeah, who's the operational control over TSA and the Air Marshals through the TSA? Who are the individuals that have that right now? Do you know who they are?
Well, yeah. Ty McNeil, she's a female. She is an acting administrator. David Pekoske was removed on the day of President Trump's inauguration. He was removed from the TSA administrator. We have not had an administrator since President Trump's inauguration. They've had an acting in, and she is definitely a Biden resistor. I have to tell you, TSA has got a lot of those that are ingrained within resisting the administration as we speak today. There's about 5 layers within this agency that needs to be removed under the fact of what they did just during the Biden administration and allowing our borders to be open, but also putting convicted sex assault and criminals, murderers on flights and flying them anywhere across the United States to drop them off in other local communities. We've seen the devastation from illegals murdering women and children and the things that happened during that time. But these individuals are still in charge at TSA.
Yeah. Some of this duty description sounds a little bit like Bureau of Prisons officers handling prisoners that have been convicted and those kind of things. Is that the approach with this? Is they treat it like a flying prison?
Yes, sir. That's exactly this. That's the approach that is being used. And and if you look at all the shootings that we've had at ICE facilities, right, to have air marshals on the ground there, and they don't have a weapon to respond, and they're the best shooters in the world. Just really everything about this is so upside down. It makes no sense, other than, the security company can't fulfill its contract, then they need to find another company. GEO Security is the one that's working on this contract, and if they can't fulfill those duties, they need to get a new company.
Yeah. Have air marshals been mistaken for ICE agents and attacked by these insurgents that we're seeing around the country? And that's
I can't tell you. Well, yes, they've been attacked in some of their restaurants. There was a news media that came out about 2 weeks ago. Air marshals were surrounded out in Los Angeles at a restaurant. They had to call the local police department. I think it took about 14 officers to respond to the location to keep the angry crowd from, hurting the air marshals that were out for dinner. And they had to swoop them away in a van to get them out of the area because the crowd thought that they were ICE officers, the way that they had looked, the way that they were dressing. They were in plain clothes. But someone said they're ICE officers in the restaurant, and then the whole restaurant tried to put, some physical and egregious actions against the air marshals, and they called 911 to get them out of there. It's crazy.
Luckily, they weren't hurt. I remember seeing the reporting on that. Do the air marshals, if they come across an illegal alien with a violent criminal record, say on an aircraft, and they happen to figure out that that's that person, are they authorized to arrest them, or do they have to just detain them and hold them for ICE?
Well, Colonel, this is the challenges we have in the Transportation Security Administration, being the only law enforcement component. Federal air marshals they don't have access to check someone's name like that. They don't have access to NCIC, FCIC. They would have to get permission to call our Mission Operations Center to be able to run that person's name through a computer database system. So we're kind of flying blind when it comes to that. We do not have the resources we need to be able to tell you if that's illegal or not.
If you had complete authority for a day, how would you reorganize the federal air marshals to correct some of these situations?
Well, the first thing I would do, I would look at why it's not working in this administrative component, and I would move the federal air marshals over to Homeland Security investigations. We don't need an entire agency. We need a component inside a law enforcement unit, like a specialty unit, like a special forces. We've done the background work on all of this. If they were to transfer the air marshals over to Homeland Security investigations, we would save $500 million a year. So the air marshal budget would be cut because we're wasting so much money on large offices in these large cities that are not really, the air marshals are a mobile workforce. They don't need a field office, but in every office where the 20 offices are currently located, we have a Homeland Security office there as well. So we could be using a dual space. We don't need to use and waste hundreds of $millions on contracts and real estate. That would be the first thing that I would do. We've been trying to work this through Congress as well, is to get this transfer to happen, because it only makes sense that you put a federal law enforcement entity to operate with another federal law enforcement entity that really understands 49 USC and how to utilize us, and TSA does not.
Yeah, unfortunate. That's very unfortunate. We've got a question in the live audience. We'll go ahead and take that before this last break. And I think we have one more after that. We'll get there in the last break. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Cookie, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you both for what you do. Just a couple questions. you're talking about the child trafficking and whatnot. How far so if the agents find somebody or suspect, how far do they investigate in, or is it turned over to the FBI to follow up with? And and if since Trump has taken over, have there been some major policy swings, changes, or people removed that were doing some of these things like spying on Tulsi Gabbard?
Well, the first question, it depends on the geographic location. If the air marshals are on the airplane and something happens in the airport, it's going to be the FBI. If they're off at a location, at a hotel or some other location, it's going to be the Homeland Security investigations. So that phone call is going to be made. And yes, those cases are going to be handed over to the authority of the geographic location whose responsibility that is in their area of responsibility. On the second question, in regards to the Trump administration, David Pekoske was not welcome to come back to the TSA, which was a great day for us because we knew that he was not the proper person, to do this job. But other than that, we have not seen a lot within the Federal Air Marshal Service. But as I said, what I wanted to say earlier, I'm not knocking the administration. What I'm saying is they may not be aware that these individuals are dug in 5 layers of rot within the TSA. This place has been growing for many, many years, and they want to resist the policies in a bipartisan manner. TSA should not be swinging left or right. They should be right down the middle because it's national security. And we're not seeing the change that we know that we hope is coming soon within TSA.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you because I go through airports a lot, and I see some inconsistencies sometimes. One is I think the liquids thing, which I think Secretary Noem eliminated the liquids issue. I believe she did anyway, and having to take your shoes off. But I still see PSA people at the security areas doing the same kind of checks. Enforcing that issue, even though the policy has been changed. Do the agents get in touch with you guys to just to keep track of these kind of things, so it's documented, and then when you're able to advocate in front of Congress and those kind of places, you can bring it up on behalf of the American people?
We do, and it varies, right? You're going, as I said, you're going to have resistors. I mean, Secretary Noem can put out the best policies, that we can have across the United States. But if there's resistance to the administration internally, those policies won't matter because they're going to do what they want to do to try to be a disruptor any way that they can. And we're seeing a lot of that, Colonel, within the TSA. There's a lot of disruption going on, and there's a lot of individuals that are just trying to resist the administration and our new goals that we need to be carrying out for aviation security.
Yeah, there's one way to fix that. Make them not government employees and go back to contract employees, and then hold them accountable to the contract. Write it in the contract. That's the best way to fix it, in my opinion. But we got to take our last break, Sonia. When we come back, we'll see a little video talking about the training that the federal air marshals get, and I want to talk about why young people should actually look at this as a place to do your public service or to serve your country, if that's what you want to do for a few years. I'll be right back with Sonia Labuska.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
A simulation of a worst-case scenario.
This is a hijacking.
A mid-flight hijacking. Exactly what federal air marshals are training to stop at this sprawling facility in New Jersey.
We are tasked with patrolling and securing the skies.
And there are thousands of them flying in pairs daily. As they're always undercover, we cannot show you their faces, but chances are they've likely sat next to you on a flight, laying low.
We are ready for anything. We're 100% trained and know exactly how to deal with certain situations.
Another drink for me. These days, that means unruly passengers. In December, 2 air marshals broke their cover on this flight from D.C. to Los Angeles. You don't got it! When a passenger became combative.
What circumstances will an agent intervene, and what things will they allow the flight crew to handle?
If a situation gets to a point where it's an arrestable offense, an assault, or something to a much higher gravity, then we'll absolutely intervene.
Future air marshals have to be precise in changing conditions.
2 rounds, 2 seconds.
Training here in low-light scenarios with moving targets and even a replica of a first-class cabin layout.
You may have upwards of 300 passengers on some of these aircraft. So the last thing that we want to have happen is one of our air marshals accidentally shoot innocent persons. We have some of the highest marksmanship standards out of any federal agency out there.
Federal air marshals, would you say they're the best shot in the biz?
Yes.
Their proof? A marksmanship score which measures accuracy.
What's your accuracy?
I am shooting a 287.
287
Yes.
out of 300.
Yes.
This recruit, who we cannot identify, had no previous law enforcement experience.
I wanted something bigger than me.
Get back! Get back!
New hires slowed during the pandemic.
Drop the weapon!
But this year, 3 new graduating classes are kicking off an effort to fill the ranks. The agency making it a priority to recruit from underrepresented groups.
You know, sometimes situations where I feel like a female would be better suited to handle a situation.
You will be the last line of defense on an aircraft should something go wrong. How does that feel?
It's a big job, but it's an honor.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and we're having a very detailed discussion about the Federal Air Marshal Service with the Executive Director of the Air Marshal National Council, Sonia Labasco. And Sonia, I just wanted to use this last segment to show the training clip there and give you the opportunity to talk about the training and why young Americans, if they want to serve their country, should consider this service.
Well, I have to tell you, the training course, we have courses in Artesia, New Mexico, or Glencoe at our Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. It's a 12-week Part 1 course, and it's absolutely some of the best training in the world. I was a law enforcement officer in Daytona Beach 12 years prior to coming over to the Air Marshals, and I always thought I was a sharpshooter at the police department. But when I came over to the Air Marshals, they really made me a tactical shooter. There's a big difference, as you said earlier, working in a cylinder and ensuring that your shot placement is perfect. And there's a lot of benefits to working with the Federal Air Marshal Service as well. We have college reimbursement up to $60,000 with a commitment. I think for three years you can receive a college reimbursement, which is very, you know, in today's world, when you hear the college kids are coming out today and they can't get a job and pay for their college, it's a great part of a package. But you get some of the best training in the world. You get to build camaraderie. You're doing a great service to our country. You're preventing another 9/11. You get to travel and see the world, but also building relationships like I have with the Air Marshals. What we're doing now with the Air Marshal National Council, we have a lot of esprit de corps, and it's just a wonderful thing for a young person to experience. And we'd love to bring them on as a member. If they want to get hired and come on, we'll welcome them into the Air Marshal National Council with wide open arms.
So where does a young person go to start the process of applying?
Well, usajobs.gov, that's the only place that it's posted. You'll also see it, follow them on Facebook and Twitter, the Federal Air Marshal Service, TSA. They host a lot of recruitment engagement at local, like in Philadelphia, they had one last year. I do think they had another one over in Orlando. So you'll see these recruitment and engagement events. That's a great place for a young person to come and just speak to someone that's on the ground level there that's recruiting for the agency. But usajobs.gov or TSA.gov is a good place to start.
Are there any special like education level requirements beyond the high school graduate, or can you just apply if you're in good health and?
Well, after 9/11, after 9/11, they didn't have the ability to do that, right? Because we had to stand up a workforce really quick, you know, in order to bring some calm in our community, in the aviation community. But now they prefer a 4-year degree. It's not required, but there's some things that they do prefer in a 4-year degree. They really like previous service in the military or law enforcement, firefighter, someone that's had a Rolodex for working through critical incidents and has that critical incident Rolodex. Firearms is great if you've got some of those skills because you'll need them. I have to tell you, the firearms course, we did about 10,000 rounds down range. It was really great training. But it's a wonderful career, and it's a good place for a young person to get started, and also to have, just a tempo of the mission of the nation that we need to carry on. Our air marshals are getting older, as you can tell, Colonel. As you go through decades of your career, you age out, and that's what's happening. You have to be 37 to join. You have to be prior to 37 to join for the Federal Air Marshals, because 20 years and 57, you're out. So a lot of our guys have approached that age gap, and they've retired or they're retiring very soon.
Yeah, you reminded me of the question I lost my train of thought on earlier, and that was you mentioned that the FAA and the military, for our aviators too, we have crew rest requirements where it's very carefully monitored. We have a strict scheduling process and a very strict qualification process every month. Because the flight environment is so unique and dangerous. It's inherently dangerous. It's not like you're getting in a cruiser and driving on a piece of pavement in a two-dimensional world. You're getting on an aircraft. You got to be the best of the best at marksmanship. You got to be, I'm sure, pretty good at hand-to-hand combat, no matter what your size is, and how to restrain people without breaking the place up too much because you're inside such a small space. Has there been any adequate personnel policies for enforcing a crew rest type regimen for the Federal Air Marshals? Because the environment itself is physically and mentally taxing just riding it.
Colonel, there has not. We're still fighting that to this day. As I said, the Aviation Transportation Security Act gives TSA near dictatorial powers regarding our schedule. That needs to be evaluated. We're 25 years into this, right? That needs to go back, and we should fall under some aviation requirements for FAA, but we do not. So our men and women can fly up to 24 hours in a day. They can go to a different country, maybe go from one country to another country with no rest. We've been at the airport. I've been at the airport on internationals. We're required to come hours early to the airport. We'll be at the airport early, and then our flight's canceled because the crew didn't get their proper rest. So we'll be sitting waiting another 3 hours for another crew to come in. So we may be 6 to 9 hours into our day before we ever start our mission because the crew had to rest.
Yeah, we need to fix that, folks. If you're listening to this and you're an advocate with Congress and the TSA or any of the administration folks, and you have contacts, you need to bring that up. We got one more question in the live audience. We'll take that before we get to the end of the show. Go ahead, Shell.
Yes, Ms. Labasco, I was just wondering, you mentioned Orlando. I'm very close to there. What are some of the signs that we should be looking for as citizens going through these terminals for human trafficking or a child in distress?
Well, I can tell you the Orlando Airport has been an amazing partner. The Greater Orlando Aviation Authority, if you go through the Orlando Airport, you're going to see mostly in the restroom areas, there's going to be signage. There's phones placed throughout the airport that you as a passenger can walk over and report something if you need to. But the signs they're pretty, if you think about every day, what does an interaction look like between two people that are traveling? Are they talking? Are they sharing ticket information? Are they getting something to eat together? Does one person look very well established, like they're clean? Does the other person look they're maybe, got some issues, they're not dressed as well? Do they look confused? Is that individual allowing the other person to speak to the ticket counter, or do they have to stand over to the side? Watch the body language. The body language tells you anything. Most everything we do is 90%. It's through our communications with our eyes, our looks, our expressions. If there's someone that you see that's not communicating at all, verbally or non-verbally, there's a problem.
Yeah, especially in a small child, right? I mean, most children are not self-absorbed, I guess.
Well, you're gonna see them throwing a fit in the airport, right? They're upset. They
Yeah.
wanted to drink. They wanted a stuffed animal. There's
Yeah.
going to be some type of normal behavior there. But when you see The abnormal, that's when you really need to pay attention. It's not the normal you're looking for, it's who does not fit in the crowd and what's the difference in their mannerisms based on everybody else that's in the crowd.
Yeah. Before we get to the end here, what are you guys' top 3 priorities in the council looking out to the future as you're working to help the administration resolve some of these issues?
Well, we need to leave TSA. We have got to get transferred out of the Transportation Security Administration. That is our number one goal. We know that that's going to help us set a platform up for federal law enforcement in the air marshals that's going to be successful. We can do a lot of dual roles over at HSI as well because they're number one in combating child trafficking. So we've got some cross duties that we could be doing as well. We fly all over the world. We see everything. There's no reason not to use us in a capacity that we could be utilized while we're on the plane looking for bad guys as well. We can be looking for all bad guys, just not one bad guy. That's the number one goal. The number 2 goal is to save the American people some money. $500 million a year. When we came out and started blowing the whistle on TSA Quiet Skies, we would have saved the American taxpayer $15 billion if the agency would have just listened to the internal complaints that were coming from the air marshals regarding Quiet Skies. Think about that. 15 billion would go a long way right now, would it not? We could do some great things with that. And the third thing is let's implement some scheduling. We have to make sure that our men and women are rested, as you said earlier. When you don't have the proper rest, you're not going to be bringing your A game. And when you're on an aircraft and you have a weapon, you need to be pretty alert. You need to be rested. So that's the top things we want to do is get out of TSA, save the American taxpayer some money, and make sure our men and women are taken care of properly and they have the proper rest.
Yeah, the air marshals should be treated at a minimum like air crews are, with a strict duty day that can be waived for operational necessity in an emergency, and with strict crew rest requirements at a minimum. So we'll be looking out to help do that advocacy as much as we can. Any conversations I get in with anybody at TSA and DHS, I'll certainly bring it up. I appreciate what you guys do there, Sonia. And tell folks how they can get in touch with the council, get in touch with you, follow you where you're at on social medias and all that stuff before I let you go.
Absolutely. You can hit us up on our website. It's airmarshalnc.com. That's airmarshalnc.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at airmarshals_FAMS. You can hit me, Sonia Labasco. It's Labasco Sonia on X. We've got an inbox too. Send us an email, reach out to us. We've got our phone numbers on our website, and we'd love to hear from the American people. We have a lot of people that reach out, Colonel, in support, so we thank them for that. It's always good to get a pat on the back for doing a good job, and that's not been so great lately. So thank you for having us on to showcase some of the issues we need to definitely tackle, and I think we can do it in 2026.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm very proud to know you guys. Thank you so much for spending so much time with my audience. I've not had anybody on from the Air Marshal Service before. You are perfect, and I look forward to having you back whenever we need to get you on to get some of your messaging out.
Well, thank you, sir, and God bless America. We appreciate you having us.
Yeah. God bless you guys. Keep up the great work. All right, tomorrow's Truth Thursday. It happens to be the day before early voting ends in Texas, and there's a big movement to ban Sharia law in Texas. We're going to talk about that. I'll see you then.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Hello, I'm Brannon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them.
Tonight on the Worldview Report, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has overturned a lower court, clearing the way for Louisiana's law requiring the Ten Commandments to be displayed in every public school classroom. Liberal federal judges are appointing their own interim U.S. attorneys over President Trump's objections, using a narrow statutory loophole to install prosecutors who block his law and order agenda. Warnings are growing that civil war is coming to Europe, especially in the UK, due to mass immigration and lack of integration and rising radicalism among young Islamic populations. President Trump vows to implement voter ID requirements for the 2026 midterms via executive order. That's if Congress fails to act, saying he has an irrefutable legal argument ready. And Chinese President Xi Jinping is openly pushing for the yuan to become a global reserve currency, signaling a direct long-term challenge to the U.S. dollar's dominance. And despite pro-life promises, the Trump administration has taken no action to regulate or restrict the abortion pill mifepristone, leaving Biden-era expansions like mail-in access in place. All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brandon House. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brandon House.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. I'm Brandon House. An article from The Hill is entitled Appeals Court Sides with Louisiana on 10 Commandments in Schools. The article reports that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, they ruled 12-6 on Friday to overturn a lower court's preliminary injunction. That injunction blocked Louisiana's law requiring the display of the 10 Commandments in every public school classroom. The appeals court, they found that the challenge was premature since the displays have not yet been implemented, stating that the 10 Commandments have both religious and historical significance, which, quote, forecloses any categorical rule against their display on public property, end quote. The ruling, it emphasized the need for a concrete, factual record of how the posters are displayed or used before a final decision on constitutionality. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill welcomed the decision, stating, quote, don't kill or steal shouldn't be controversial. My office has issued clear guidance to our public schools on how to comply with the law. And we have created multiple examples of posters demonstrating how it can be applied constitutionally. Louisiana public schools should follow the law, end quote. Challenges, they include the ACLU calling the ruling extremely disappointing and said it forces families into ongoing legal battles, vowing to continue to fight the law. HB 71, it was enacted in 2024, and it does require poster-sized displays in each classroom, potentially funded by donations, and it applies to public elementary schools and high schools as well as colleges and universities. The decision, it lifts the block and it immediately allows implementation to proceed, though further challenges are indeed expected once displays are in place. And we turn to an article from AMAC Newsline. It's entitled, Liberal Judges Declare Themselves President. The article is by Mike Marlowe, and it reports that rogue federal judges are exploiting a narrow statutory provision to appoint interim U.S. attorneys over President Donald Trump's objections, effectively usurping executive branch authority. The article describes a recent incident in upstate New York, where federal judges swore in a prosecutor of their choice as U.S. attorney, prompting Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche to post on X, quote, Judges don't pick U.S. attorneys. At POTUS does. See Article 2 of our Constitution. You are fired, end quote. Under law, the Attorney General can appoint an interim U.S. attorney for 120 days. That's when a vacancy occurs and Senate confirmation is delayed. If the Senate still has not acted, district court judges may appoint a replacement. The piece argues that liberal judges, they are abusing this temporary measure as a judicial coup in order to install prosecutors who frustrate Trump's law enforcement priorities on crime, border security, and corruption. Similar actions have occurred in New Jersey, Nevada, California, New Mexico, and Virginia. The article blames Senate Democrats and their partisan use of the informal, what's known as blue slip tradition, where home state senators can block nominees for stalling confirmations in blue states, thus allowing judicial interventions. President Trump has called for ending the blue slip practice, stating it makes approvals impossible in Democrat states, and he criticized Republicans like Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa for permitting it. The conclusion of the article states the problem stems from Republican senators and their failure to assert constitutional authority by holding hearings and votes on nominees, thus allowing judges to reshape executive power, while voters lose accountability. An article from the New American is entitled, "Warning, Civil War is Coming to Europe, and It Will Be Bloody." The article is by Selwyn Duke, and it reports that predictions of civil war in Europe, particularly in the United Kingdom, are increasing. This is due to mass immigration, demographic shifts, and lack of integration by Islamic populations. The piece, it cites retired British Colonel Richard Kemp. He's a former commander in Northern Ireland and Afghanistan. And he warned in a recent interview that the Islamification of the UK is leading to inevitable conflict because Islamic immigrants, they refuse to integrate. Kemp described a potential scenario resembling Northern Ireland, but far more intense, with indigenous British, some immigrant groups, and the government fighting on opposing sides. He stated, no UK government has the resolve to stop it, as they avoid trouble and voters lack real political choice in what he called a non-democratic system. The article references Enoch Powell's 1968 warning that immigration policies would lead to civil war and demographic transformation, noting that indigenous Brits are now a minority in multiple UK cities. It provides population estimates showing indigenous Brits declining from 97.5% in 1971 to 70.5% in 2026. Research is cited indicating that young British Muslims are more radical than older generations. And academics like David Betts and Michael Ronsborough, they argue preconditions for civil conflict do indeed exist. The conclusion of the article, it warns that demographic changes through immigration can be halted via the ballot box, as seen with negative net migration under President Trump. But failure to act, well, that will lead to subjugation or bloody conflict. An article from Slay News is entitled, Trump Vows Voter ID for Midterms by Executive Order if Congress Won't Act. And the article states that President Donald Trump has declared on Truth Social that voter ID requirements will be implemented for the 2026 midterm elections with or without congressional approval. President Trump posted, quote, there will be voter ID for the midterm elections, whether approved by Congress or not, end quote. He added that he had, quote, searched the depths, end quote, of legal arguments and would present an irrefutable one soon via executive order, stating, quote, if we can't get it through Congress, there are legal reasons why this scam is not permitted, end quote. The announcement follows the House's passage of the SAVE Act. It's called the Save America Act, in fact, and that passed at a vote level of 218 to 213 along party lines. And that bill requires proof of citizenship for voter registration. That includes photo ID for in-person voting and removal of non-citizens from the voter rolls. The bill, it faces an uncertain future in the Senate. President Trump's vow, well, it positions executive action as a backup if Congress fails to advance similar measures, though the specific legal authority remains unspecified, and it would likely invite court challenges. Proponents, they argue that voter ID protects election integrity and is common for activities like air travel, while opponents, they claim that it could burden voters, though no evidence of widespread access issues is cited. An article from Slay News again is entitled, Chinese Communist Party pushes yuan as global reserve currency in direct challenge to dollar-dominated system. The article reports that the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, has called for the yuan to achieve global reserve currency status as part of building a, quote, powerful currency, end quote, widely used in international trade, investment, and foreign exchange markets. In a commentary published in the CCP's flagship journal, Xi Jinping, he emphasized the need for sweeping financial reforms, including what he called a powerful central bank, globally competitive financial institutions, and international financial centers to attract capital and influence worldwide pricing. China's central bank governor predicted a, quote, multipolar international monetary system, end quote, where the yuan competes with major currencies. Kelvin Lamb of Pantheon Microeconomics, he noted that Beijing views fractures in the global financial order as more real than before, especially amid U.S. dollar weakening and geopolitical tensions. However, the yuan's current role remains limited. International Monetary Fund data, it shows it at 1.93% of global reserves in quarter 3 of 2025, ranking number 6, compared to the U.S. dollar's 57%. That is down from 71% in the year 2000. And the euro's at 20%. Analysts, they cite major obstacles, including China's reluctance to fully open capital accounts or allow complete convertibility to prevent capital flight and instability. The People's Bank of China, the vice governor, stated that Beijing has no intention of weakening the yuan for export advantages and is tolerating modest appreciation against the dollar. Han Xinlin of the Asia Group said that Xi Jinping's rhetoric, well, it signals long-term ambitions, but, quote, won't flip global foreign exchange markets today, end quote, positioning the yuan as a counterweight in a shifting order. We'll be right back after this short break. What if millions around the world could access Bible teaching and worldview training for free right now without hitting a paywall? That's exactly what happens every day at worldviewtube.com because of the Worldview Weekend Foundation. We don't lock our live stream behind PayPal. We don't restrict our content to members only. Instead, the Worldview Weekend Foundation helps cover the cost of delivering free educational and ministry programming to people across the nation and around the world. And it's not just programming. My Sunday night church service, where I taught verse by verse through Revelation for 18 months, and now I am teaching through the book of Daniel, is made possible through the support of our church, Worldview Weekend Foundation. If you believe this kind of truth-centered biblical teaching must continue, donate today. Go now to worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address and phone number there if you'd rather give by phone or mail. That's worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you. Welcome back from the break. Thanks for being with us tonight and every night. Have you marked your calendar for October 23rd? That's a Friday night. Saturday, October 24th, the 22nd Annual National Worldview Weekend. It's being held this year in Waukesha, Wisconsin, just outside of Milwaukee, at the historic Waukesha Expo Center. We've already signed a contract, put down the deposit, and we're doing something, not only something new, meaning moving it to Waukesha, first time we've ever held our national Worldview Weekend there. We're doing something else brand new, and that is, for the first time in 22 years, we're making our National Worldview Weekend free of charge. It's going to be brought to you by our foundation in part, and we're going to make it absolutely free. But you will need a ticket so that you can have a seat because it's going to fill up. We were there in April for just one night at 1,000 people, standing room only. Now we anticipate with this great lineup, Dr. Andy Wood, Patrick Wood, Sharam Hadian, Annie Cyrus, Alex Newman, myself, and others will be invited, by the way. That's just the initial lineup. We anticipate it, again, filling up big time. So if you would like to go ahead and reserve your seat, you need to get your free ticket by going to worldviewtube.com/events, worldviewtube.com/events. Hope you can join us for the 22nd annual Biblical Worldview Weekend in Waukesha, Wisconsin at the historic Waukesha Expo Center. You appreciate all the stuff we try to do for free, like the free Worldview Weekend, free Worldview Report, free Worldview Radio, Brighton House Live, all the free shows we carry. Not only do we carry them and push them out on a stream that we pay for, thousands of dollars to push out free programming, but then we put it back up online for people to watch either for the first time or watch again or share with family and friends. Again, absolutely free of charge. Well, that's because of one of our major sponsors, the Worldview Foundation. So please partner with us through the Worldview Foundation, would you? So we can continue to push out lots of Christian worldview programming for the edification and equipping and encouragement of the saints. And of course, the proclamation of the gospel at the same time. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. And as I always say, you will find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. Well, now we turn to an article from The Federalist. It's entitled, "Despite Promise to be Pro-Life Ally, Trump Administration Won't Regulate Abortion Drug Endangering Women." The article is by Jordan Boyd, and it reports that the Trump administration has not taken action to regulate or restrict mifepristone. That's the primary abortion pill, despite campaign promises and pledges to be a pro-life ally. And that's leading to a growing frustration among pro-life groups. GOP legislators are also concerned, as well are activists. The FDA, under Commissioner Marty McCary, is described as slow walking a promised safety review of mifepristone, which remains in a so-called data acquisition phase. No progress on analyzing risks like hemorrhage, infection, or other serious complications. The agency, they approved a new generic version in October of 2025, but they refused to reinstate the pre-Biden risk evaluation and mitigation strategy safeguards like mandatory in-person dispensing or doctor visits. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and McCary, they pledged in 2025 to review data on mifepristone's dangers, but no measurable steps have been taken to roll back Biden-era expansions allowing mail order and pharmacy dispensing. Senator Josh Hawley, Republican of Missouri, called the safety study a, quote, dead end, end quote, with no advancement, stating women are being, quote, lied to, end quote, and babies killed without action. Pro-life organizations like SBA List and Live Action, they have called for McCary's firing, accusing the FDA of endangering women. An April 2025 EPPC study, it was cited in an article, and it claims serious adverse events are 22 times higher than FDA Danco estimates. And that's based on private insurance data showing over 1 in 10 women facing complications. States like Louisiana, they're joined by 21 other states and 60 Congress members and 58 pro-life groups. They sued the FDA back in 2025 to end mail order access, arguing it enables coercion and undermines state bans post-Dobbs. The FDA, they requested a court pause in January of 2026, calling challenges disruptive. The article at the Federalist, it warns that inaction threatens Republican midterm turnout. And polling shows 32% of GOP voters, they may sit out if pro-life policies are weakened. And they urge immediate steps like withdrawing Biden's rules or reinstating safeguards as delays tie states' hands and enable interstate trafficking of the drug. Well, now it's time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. It's based tonight on a brand new article over at The New American. The article is entitled, When Left-Wing CBS Dan Rather Warned of Americans Being Replaced by Foreigners. The article reports that in a 1986 CBS News special entitled 48 Hours on Crack Street, veteran anchorman Dan Rather, he warned about the demographic and cultural consequences of unchecked illegal immigration from Latin America. In the broadcast, Dan Rather stated, quote, "The problem is we're being invaded by foreigners. They're coming across the border in droves. They're taking jobs. They're taking welfare. They're taking our culture," end quote. He added that the influx was leading to replacement of American citizens in communities, schools, and workplaces. And he quoted residents in border areas saying that they felt like strangers in their own country due to the rapid demographic shifts. The article, it notes that Dan Rather, of course, a prominent liberal journalist at the time, framed the issue in terms, well, similar to modern discussions of the Great Replacement. The article highlights the irony that a figure from the mainstream left media once voiced the very concerns about mass immigration eroding national identity and overwhelming public resources. That is now a position held largely by many conservatives, and yet is downplayed or rejected by much of the same media and the political establishment. The piece, it argues that Rather's warnings from nearly 40 years ago have proven, well, predictive, citing current border crossings, the strain on social services, and indeed the cultural changes in formerly, well, tight-knit communities. And this is all evidence that the replacement dynamic that he described has indeed accelerated. So think about this for a second. Dan Rather, the same guy the establishment media lionized for decades, stood on national television and used the words invasion, replacement, and taking our culture. He wasn't reading from a conservative talking points memo. He was reporting what border communities were telling him. He was reporting what he could see with his own eyes. And now, almost 4 decades later, the numbers, well, they are exponentially worse. And the communities, well, they're more transformed. The strain on schools and hospitals and taxpayer resources, well, they are more crushing. Yet the same media that once aired those warnings calls anyone who echoes them now a racist or even conspiracy theorist. Watch this clip.
The American people are having a national anxiety attack over large-scale immigration.
Illegal immigration has to stop.
It's enough already.
Tonight on 48 Hours.
We can't take care of the world.
Anger over immigration.
People who are here illegally will be deported if found by the Immigration Service. That's the law.
His cards look just fine. Look as good as anybody else's.
We went to school for these skills, and someone else come in and take them?
Americans fired.
I feel hurt and let down.
And replaced by foreigners.
If people didn't hire them, they wouldn't be here.
It is outrageous. American workers are once again getting shafted.
I do feel sorry for them.
They couldn't believe America could do this to their own people.
Schools and hospitals strained to the limit.
We've had students that have just gotten off a raft, others that have been smuggled in.
We took in 587 children in 2 days.
Criminal aliens on our streets.
Burglaries, robberies, purse snatches.
He's got 20 different aliases.
I just can't believe this really happened.
Should America slam the door?
You'll come back here. Definitely.
Tonight, join Dan Rather. 48 Hours, slamming the door.
Well, the question that we face today is not whether Dan Rather was right back then. We all know he was. The question is whether we still have the courage as a nation to admit the obvious and actually do something about it before the America our parents and grandparents knew is replaced for good. This isn't about left or right anymore, folks. It's about whether we still believe this country belongs to its own citizens, first and foremost. What do you think? That does it for my nightly commentary, and that does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. If you appreciate a Christian worldview broadcast like this, we need your support to keep it going. We have now done over 1,000 of these broadcasts, the Worldview Report, and you help make it possible in part through your contributions to Worldview Foundation, our sponsor that helps us push it out as free education and ministry broadcast. Don't forget, our foundation also is our Sunday night church service where I'm teaching through the book of Daniel. After spending a year and a half in the book of Revelation, we're now in the book of Daniel. So thank you for your support at worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Till next time, I'm Brandon House. May God save America. Take care. Do you know about glutathione? You can't live without it. It's a naturally occurring ingredient in your body. But guess what? It starts to decrease around the age of 20. You need glutathione. There are over 165,000 studies on glutathione at PubMed. It detoxes your cells. And we know there are toxins everywhere. In fact, studies have shown glutathione may remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Check it out at swishforlife.com. You just put a small 2 caps in your mouth, swish it for about 3 minutes. Then you can swallow it or spit it out. Studies show that this is in your bloodstream within 90 seconds. It's better than an IV. That'll cost you about $250, and it's broken down. But when you swish with it, it is in your body in 90 seconds in its totality. Glutathione, you need it to live. Swishforlife.com. Swishforlife.com. Studies have shown America's water supply is not safe. It is filled with toxins and chemicals. Go look it up. This is fact. Fact check me. And then I'll offer you this solution. Worldviewwater.net. Take a look at this list. This water purifier removes all kinds of harmful toxins like lead, fluoride, chlorine, arsenic, pesticides, bacteria, and pharmaceuticals, and more. This is the water I give to my 3 dogs. I drink it every day. I have one of the filters in my kitchen, under the kitchen sink, and then I have one on my shower. Do you know how much your skin absorbs of water when you're in the shower each and every day? Protect yourself and your body. Remain healthy. Eat good food. Drink purified, clean water. One of the most powerful water filters available in America. Worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net. Again, tell your family and friends about it. In fact, maybe even give this as a gift to some of your family and friends, particularly those of you who have children and grandchildren. Worldviewwater.net. Welcome to the broadcast. Brandon House Live here, 7:31 Central, 8:31 Eastern Standard, as we are awaiting President Trump's first State of the Union in his second term. Tonight, we're being told that the speech could be what's that? Oh, Patrick's with us. Good deal. Patrick Wood's going to join me through the night. We're being told that this could be a 2-hour plus speech. Some have even said 3 hours. Let's pray that's not the case. 3 hours, come on. But we are hearing 2 hours. 2 hours indeed could be the length of this speech. We are watching the White House doors as we are expecting President Trump. If you guys could pull out that, pull it out a little bit, the frame off my, there you go, off my image. Thank you. There you go. The doors are open, C-SPAN footage provided, which I guess means we are about to see the president and First Lady walk out, get into what is known as the Beast, and then travel down Pennsylvania Avenue to the U.S. Capitol. we are being told tonight, will be a rehearsal of the things that they have accomplished in the Trump administration in his first year back in office for his second term. So we'll be hearing about that. We are also getting word that there may be, again, a strike coming on Iran, and that the White House is trying, I'm told, if these sources are accurate, that the White House is actually considering taking out the Ayatollah Khamenei. And there is President Trump and First Lady walking to the beast, headed to Capitol Hill. But reports are, again, if these sources are accurate, that President Trump is trying to decide whether to take out the Ayatollah Khamenei and or his son. Now, some would say, what? Why the son? Apparently that son, of course, would be the next leader in line. So again, there's a lot of debate going on as to what is going to happen. I guess Chuck Schumer came out of a briefing today saying that this is a big deal. What's about to happen is a big deal related to Iran. Others are saying it's going to get us into a war we don't need to be in, and that it could create real problems, depending on, of course, where Russia and China come down. But just Iran alone. But apparently, we're going to find out more tonight as the motorcade is now moving and headed toward Capitol Hill. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump on board. Joining me now and will be with me throughout the evening, as long as the two of us can hang in here, as, by the way, members of the Senate. You see Senator Cotton right there. You see the senator from Missouri just walked by. There's Fetterman. I could keep naming these guys off, but that's kind of boring. But there's Josh Hawley going by. They are headed across Statutory Hall to the House side, the chamber side, the House side. And that's what's going on there. Joining me, as I said, to provide running color commentary throughout the night, is, if we can indeed stay here for 2 to 3 hours, if that's how long it goes, is none other than Patrick Wood. Patrick, welcome. Thank you for joining us on this special live coverage of the President's State of the Union address.
This is a big deal for sure. I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to say. We'll be commenting along the way if it's appropriate.
Yeah, we will. We're just going to mute the president for a moment, make a few comments, jump back in. We're taking notes. I've got my notepad. I'm sure Patrick has his as well. And we're going to be anticipating what he might say. Do you believe that he will, and we can bring that down, do you believe that we will be going to hear about data centers, AI, the golden age? What do you think?
I think so. He has to mention something about it for sure. Remember, this was the race against China, right? So he's certainly going to update us on the race. Are we ahead? Are we behind? Whatever.
You and I had a very interesting broadcast today that I sent out to a few friends of mine over at worldviewtube.com, where most of you are watching, I'm sure, tonight. You'll find it there, worldviewtube.com, although I know we're on YouTube, we're on Spreaker, we're on Truth Social. We're on so many platforms. But I sent out a link to our radio show, TV show at 1 o'clock Central today, because it was just a fascinating conversation you and I had, because President Trump has this international peace board, as we all know. But I'm sure a lot of the listeners, some of them knew already because it's a pretty informed audience, but I think some were maybe shocked to find out that this is a board that is independent from any government. He's the head of it. He can choose who is on the board, who is not, and he is the chairman as long as he is on this planet or chooses to resign and offer up the job to whoever else he picks. I mean, this you and I talked about from a biblical perspective, a Bible prophecy perspective, in that he has made comments the UN has kind of not done what it really could be capable of doing. And you and I are saying when you pay $1 billion to have a seat, man, I'm looking to see if we end up with 10 leaders per Revelation 17, the 10 horns or 10 kings who've not yet received a kingdom, meaning at the time John was writing, but who will receive a kingdom or an empire or a land mass, and then they give their power to the Antichrist. I'm not saying President Trump's the Antichrist, but what I'm saying is it seems as though the system for whether it's digital ID, cryptocurrency, tracking, social credit scores, and now the ability to create out of thin air an international board with $1 billion price tag per seat can be created that will long survive even after he's out of office or who he appoints after him. The point was this could go very quickly. And Revelation chapter 1 says that when these things begin to unfold, they'll happen fast. I think you and I are now seeing how the framework could go so that things that are not even thinkable now become thinkable, even in sometimes a matter of days or weeks or months.
I'm wondering if the tech pros in Washington, D.C., who basically all subscribe to the dark enlightenment philosophy that Curtis Yarvin put in place in the first place, and I think they're encouraging Trump to become monarch, maybe of the world as in America, maybe the world then next. But this is an embedded ideology in Washington, D.C., that we need a monarch to run everything, because basically order is going to be fleeting. And they say we have to have somebody like a CEO run the country like a startup in Silicon Valley. This is very dangerous thinking, because it obviates the Constitution altogether. We don't want a dictator or a monarch in America. That's totally antithetic to the American experiment.
Yeah, indeed it is. And here we have footage again, Vice President making his way onto the floor. Of course, folks have watched many of these. Will know that he will eventually be sitting behind the lectern of which President Trump will be at, speaking, along with the House Speaker Mike Johnson. I see John Thune in the picture there for one moment. Now we're starting to see the generals that sit on the Joint Chiefs of Staff down at the bottom left-hand corner of your picture. Mike Johnson is now already up on the podium. There you go. There's your various members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Again, the discussion is whether the Supreme Court will be there tonight, how many of them, particularly after the harsh words by President Trump this week. Do you think he'll be calling them out when it comes to the tariffs? Do you think he'll be naming them and pointing to them? They'll just be matter of feet from him.
It's going to be interesting to see. Traditionally, this Supreme Court is deadpan. They don't crack a smile. They don't clap. They don't stand up. Nothing. So they're probably going to do that tonight. But you might just get a glimmer, like an eyelid moving, something like that. Or maybe Trump is going to call them out, and they'll get him moving that way. But all these people in the front row, they're supposed to be completely silent, not giving approval or disapproval.
Yeah, you're not going to see the generals giving too much. They're apolitical. The Supreme Court members are not going to be giving too much away. A lot of times those guys don't even applaud because, again, they are supposed to be neutral on this situation. Now, I want to go back real quick to what you and I were talking about today. And with this International Peace Board, you were mentioning that some of the members are known to be members of the Trilateral Commission. Now, that's the kind of thing that people say, well, now he's getting off into conspiracy and conspiracy theories. But Senator Barry Goldwater, who, by the way, just for folks who don't know, Barry Goldwater's chief of staff came into Patrick Wood's office, 3-4 decades ago, and said 4 decades ago, and said, and he thought he was with the FBI. Way he was dressed, Patrick thought he was FBI.
I was pretty sure he was going to pull out a Tommy gun and just mow us all down. I just looked that way.
You thought he was government, though, huh?
Well, yeah, he had Spitzschauen shoes. He had a nice suit, and plus he had that kind of a buff look, square cut shoulders. He just looked the type.
Yeah. And so he walked in, and it turns out he was the chief of staff for Senator Barry Goldwater, who we all know ran for president. 64, Ronald Reagan gave that great speech that we know today, A Time for Choosing. And he said, we want to have your help. The senator wants to write a book on the Trilateral Commission. So for those that think this is the stuff of conspiracies, no, the Trilateral Commission is a real group. It's not something that's made up, that people make up and talk about. It doesn't really exist. It does exist. He warned about it and said that they would penetrate the issue of government and economics and the ecclesiastical arena, religion.
Religion as well.
Many of these people on this international board, you say, are tied back to the Trilateral Commission, right?
Indeed, they are. And these are handpicked by President Trump. This wasn't they weren't appointed from the United Nations or Congress or whatever. These are handpicked people. In fact, all of the people on the board are handpicked by Trump. He has the sole say on who's going to serve. And these are his choices.
These are his choices indeed, which I don't know if the audience, how many of them caught today's broadcast, but you pointed out something to me today, and that is there was a group started many, many years ago called the Elders. The Elders. Who are we?
Well,
and it was founded by Nelson Rockefeller, and then you see down here at the bottom, the late Jimmy Carter was involved. How does this square up with this new International Peace Board of President Trump, the group, the Elders?
Their mission on the homepage there is to establish peace among the nations. That's exactly what they wanted to do. A group of global leaders working for peace, justice, and human rights, and a sustainable planet, of course. But most of these members, I think probably 60% of them, were members of the Trilateral Commission. I viewed that at the time basically just it's like an extension of the Trilateral Commission. And these people had the audacity to say, well, the world is like a village, and we're going to be the elders of the world. And so they just went out to do good things around the world. And I don't think any of them came to pass. But here's my point. This has been brewing in their mind for a long time, this business about keeping peace. And who doesn't want peace? Everybody wants peace. But it's never happened either, because, that's the way people are. But at this point, Trump is stepping up, and he's continuing this elder nonsense by creating this board of peace. And there's not even going to be elders. The elders, typically, you think, well, like at a church, if they want to do something, if they voted on it. Well, I don't think Trump is going to allow any voting at all amongst his board of directors. So, this is going to be an autocratic, top-down exercise of whatever. I don't know. Maybe they're going to be peace, but my guess is it's going to be somewhat economic and fashion. And I think probably we're going to see many billions of dollars changing hands.
Mm. And we talked today about Tony Blair in my book, The Coming Religious Reich from 2016. It's about 500 pages. I talk a lot about Tony Blair in that book because Tony Blair, as you know, is part of the Labor Party that was birthed out of the Fabian socialist movement. The Fabian socialists want world government, socialism and world government. Really by evolution, not revolution. They're happy to let the Marxists and the Islamists kick the can down the road, then they'll take advantage of the chaos. But he's a Fabian socialist, and he unveiled the Fabian window after it was missing for a while and showed back up. He unveiled it and talked about how the Labor Party was hopefully accomplishing the goals of the Fabian Socialist Society. We know that that window by George Bernard Shaw, created in 1910, has a man, two men banging on a hot earth that's come out of the fire with a man in a purple robe who's using a bellow and blowing up the fire, making the fire bigger. The world comes out of that fire, and it says at the top of the picture, remold it nearer to the heart's desire. And they're taking this crisis and they're hammering on the world, remolding it into their shape. So in other words, order out of crisis, order out of chaos. That's Tony Blair's group. He also had the Tony Blair Faith Foundation, seeking to bring the religions of the world together as one. Mm-hmm. And yet, here's Tony Blair on this committee as we're waiting President Trump. Here is Tony Blair and what he had to say. I want you to comment on this. We have audio. We'll pull that down and we'll find out where it's coming from. It's probably one of the live feeds that we're carrying in the background. Okay. We'll find it and we'll mute that so we can play that. That take care of it? All right. Now let's go back to Tony Blair. Again, he is at this International Board of Peace that was last Thursday. Listen to this, please.
For decades, Gaza's governance has been characterized by extremism, corruption, ineffective institutions, and the complete absence of a route to prosperity for the Gazan people. Yet, as President Trump recognized, its potential has always been vast. 25 miles of Mediterranean coastline, proximity to great regional and global markets, and a young, dynamic population with a median age of 19. So today we set out profound changes necessary to rebuild Gaza for Gazans. Gaza not as it was, but as it should be, including its governance. effective public institutions serving the people, a business environment where enterprise flourishes, an education system educating the young for tolerance and achievement, and a tech-enabled society making the most of the digital revolution. This is a vision of Gaza as part of a Middle East at peace, not a phony piece of declarations no one means and agreements no one intends to keep, but a genuine commitment to a region where, whether you're a Muslim, Jew, Christian, of any faith or none, you can rise by your own efforts and feel your government by your side, not on your back. That is the vision behind President Trump's 20-point plan for Gaza, and it remains the best, indeed the only hope for Gaza, the region, and the wider world.
The only hope for the region, and the wider world, the only hope is President Trump's peace board. Again, fascinating to see a guy like Tony Blair, who we've been following for a long time, sitting there talking like this. And President Trump has said on video, we can pretty much do what we want. Patrick?
This is one of the members of the Trilateral Commission, is Tony Blair. He's speaking for the club, if you will. I think George Carlin he said, once upon a time, there's a club and you ain't in it. And so, at this point, they're in it, you're not, and they're going to call the shots. But it's totally hypocritical, in my opinion, for him to say something like this when he's caused so much chaos in the world, including the Islamic invasion of Great Britain. This is absolutely unconscionable to me that he would be involved with this stuff in the first place on behalf of the Trilateral Commission, I have to say. And so now he's saying, "Oh, we're gonna achieve peace in your time." Sorry, I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either. But of course, President Trump put out this tweet, this Truth Social post. The Board of Peace has unlimited potential. Last October, I released a plan for the permanent end to the conflict in Gaza. Our vision was unanimously adopted by the United Nations Security Council. Shortly thereafter, we facilitated humanitarian aid at record speed and secured the release of every living and deceased hostage. Just last month, 24 distinguished founding members joined me in Davos, Switzerland, to celebrate its official formation and present a bold vision for the civilians in Gaza, and then ultimately for beyond Gaza. And then notice, Patrick, all caps, world peace, world peace. It's interesting. I'm not saying President Trump is the Antichrist, not saying that. But I do think that we are being conditioned for a world leader who will promise world peace, yes, because the Bible tells us that he shows up on a horse and he is claiming to bring world peace. And it's a fake peace because right away the next CO we see is one of war. So it's a false peace. But we're being primed for global peace, are we not?
It seems that way. And it's really interesting that both Blair and Trump are basically dismissing the United Nations at this point. Was set up in the first place by people like John D. Rockefeller and way long ago, but it's always been viewed as kind of an organ that was used by the Rockefeller family to pursue, for instance, Agenda 21, 2030 Agenda, climate change, that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden, they're sweeping it aside. Tony Blair just said, basically, guys, you haven't cut it. We're taking over. This unelected, unaccountable board of peace, there's nobody going to shepherd them at all. And they're going to take over the mission of global peace, and it's going to be taken away from the United Nations. This in itself just tells you, well, they're done with the United Nations at this point. That's what it tells me in any case. Mm-hmm. When especially all these members of the Trilateral Commission who are milling around the world, Keir Starmer's a member of the Trilateral Commission. Carney in Canada is a member of the Trilateral Commission. There's plenty others as well, and on this Board of Peace. So these people are milling around, licking their chops to get their hands on the complete economic system of the world. And the United Nations now stands in their way, and I think we're going to see more and more actions against the UN to minimize them and get them out of the way.
And what's very interesting about this whole thing, too, as you know, Patrick, is that President Trump has openly talked about Qatar recently at this first meeting. And to think that we're going to include groups like Qatar, Qatar, depending on if you want to say it, it really is an ecumenical interfaith event, is it not? Which is what you see with a one world religion, a one world economy, a one world government. So it's not like this is some exclusive group that, well, we know that can't be laying the foundation for what's coming because it's not inclusive enough. This is extremely inclusive, which fits the narrative of where we're going. Again, I don't know if this board will be around in a year, 2 years, 3 years. I have no idea. But the fact that it's around and that this template's being used, created out of thin air, given its own power and authority with global leaders and one man at the helm picking who can be on and who cannot and who is appointed for life until he chooses someone else, shows us that this whole system that will eventually come by Antichrist can be created quickly. Again, this system that we're seeing now, the people involved may have nothing to do with it, but it's setting the framework, and it's really setting the legal framework. We know that a lot of our laws, sadly, in America are not based on static law, the Constitution, absolute truth. It's Darwinian evolution. Society evolves, morals evolve, the law evolves, and it's case law theory. That's the whole Christopher Columbus Langdau philosophy applied to the law. Case law. You get one judge or the Supreme Court to make a silly unconstitutional ruling, and then the next courts hang their ruling on that as well. Well, this is in the same way as setting an international precedent that says, yeah, if this isn't the platform, if this isn't the system, if this isn't the committee, the next group, the next individual, the Antichrist, well, he's already been given now permission to set up such a system and create it very quickly with international power.
Apparently so. And we need to remember, too, that Trump has basically declared himself to be the monarch of this group. Monarchies are passed from father to son. We see this in England, for instance. And Trump has exclusive power to stay in power for life, his life, right? And he's required to pick his successor before he dies. I don't know what else he'll do if he doesn't do it before he dies. Say, for instance, if he did drop dead right now, I don't know how this would work. Maybe they'll have a little room somewhere, and they all vote, and we'll see a puff of smoke or something coming out of the chimney. I don't know, but it's interesting. This is set up as a monarchy. That tells you something about the whole project. It's going to stay in the family and not be shared with anybody else. In other words, if Tony Blair ever thinks he's going to become the leader, it'll only be because Trump appoints him. But more likely, Trump will keep it in his own family. Why not?
Can we find the cover that was I guess it was a funny cover that they made
Time Magazine.
On Time Magazine? Can we find that? Logan had that earlier today. Maybe ask Logan where it's at. But it was a funny cover of President Trump on a mocked up. Here it is. Found it. And apparently President Trump put this out himself. He put this out on True Social. The guys in the control room tell me. Hopefully they're right. But this was some kind of funny little cover people made. Long live the king. And apparently he reposted that on True Social as a joke too. But I have to wonder, isn't there a little bit of truth in every joke? For the most part,
yes,
depending on the joke.
Indeed.
Depending on the joke, we'll give ourselves that little caveat, depending on the joke.
Yeah, seems that way.
You know, we've talked about people like Barack Obama, getting out of the White House after 8 years, and could you see him becoming the UN Secretary General? And you think like that, or Bill Clinton or someone. That never happened. But we are actually seeing President Trump, while he's president, set up himself as an international global leader. Which is going to usher in, they think, the golden age, right? Which I find very interesting because the New Apostolic Reformation, the false prophets and apostles in this crowd, the Reconstructionists, the Dominionists, they all believe that we're headed toward a golden age of so many people becoming believers. And I'd love to see that. but I don't see that in the Bible. I see a great falling away from traditionally held biblical truths. But they talk about this great golden age. And that's interesting because they use that phrase. Here's President Trump using it, and he's surrounded by these kind of people on his Religious Liberty Commission, people that are in this kind of a, let's set a global dominionism, a Christianity so-called that spreads. So again, when you factor that in as well, it's just very interesting, all of the things that are converging at one time that most Americans, and sadly, most Christians are not even recognizing these different phases and things and streams that are flowing that eventually will come together on a global scale. And I think really start to fulfill the things that we see in the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. And I say, find a network tonight, Patrick, that's going to discuss this with someone like yourself, who's been studying this for 40 plus years. You're not going to get this kind of Christian worldview, biblical backdrop to all of these global events, are you?
Not hardly. Not hardly.
What do you make of that? That so many of these folks are Reconstructionists and Dominionists and are calling for basically a theocracy. You know, we had, and again, Pete Hegseth's prayer the other night at the White House. It was a beautiful prayer. It was a wonderful and beautiful prayer, and I commend him for it. Other than one phrase, he started out King Jesus. Well, Jesus is not king right now. The Bible says in the book of Hebrews chapter 1, Hebrews chapter 8, I believe it is, that he is set down at the right hand of the Father, and he's serving as the high priest, making intercessory prayer for us. He will be king, and during the millennial kingdom in Jerusalem, the Davidic throne he'll sit upon. But right now, he's our high priest. But many of these people are buying a wrong eschatology, and their bad theology and eschatology is driving them to try to create this golden age where we have to subdue all the seven mountains of mandates of arts, media, government, entertainment, and usher in the kingdom of God. That's not in the Bible, but yet you see this mixture of government and religious eschatology that is quite interesting to watch, because you and I and so many talked about that kind of thing would come. We didn't see that in the Biden years. We're seeing it now.
Exactly. One of the chapters in our new book, The Final Betrayal, How Technocracy Destroyed America, chapter 7 deals with the rise of state religion. And it's unmistakable at this point, in my opinion, that there's going to be not a gaslighting, but we'll see the ecumenical movement is jumping for joy at this point.
The ecumenical movement is jumping for joy. That's a great way to put it.
Well, they really are, because they haven't seen this for a long time. Tony Blair was like the head of the ecumenical movement in the last 20, 30 years. So he's been pushing this for a long time. Let's get everybody together, the Muslims, the Buddhists, the Hindus, and the Christians, and the World Council of Churches, all these people together in the same organization. And let's work out our differences, or just let's ignore our differences and work together on certain projects. Well, isn't this exactly where we've just arrived? Seems to me.
That's what John D. Rockefeller, who, of course, they donated the land on which the UN sits. He said so many decades ago, would that I had the vision, would that you could see the vision as it unfolds in my mind. I see the church literally leading the way as it should in all great movements. I see it literally establishing the kingdom of God on earth. That's a direct quote from John D. Rockefeller, who gave the land on which the UN sits, right? And the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, the Rockefeller Foundation, they're also very involved still to this day. And now, sadly, so many Christians have bought the idea that, hey, aren't we supposed to build the kingdom of God? Yet, as I've been saying in our series on Daniel, you know, we're not given a great conquest, a plan for a great conquest. We're given the plan of a great commission. We're in the church age right now. We go out and we preach the gospel, but many think we have a great conquest. And isn't it interesting that people on the left and the right have bought into this idea of a great conquest to establish God's kingdom on earth? Well, Daniel 2 tells us several times, friends, Daniel 2 verse 44, that God brings his kingdom. God establishes the kingdom, that he brings it. We don't build it. So again, I have to ask, who are they laying the foundation for? What kingdom and whose kingdom?
This language that we saw with Hague's prayer, King Jesus, this is a concept that's promoted by Doug Wilson and his network of churches around the country. Their idea is, of course, that Jesus is the king of the world. This world right now, in other words, the king of all the nations. This is completely off base, but this is what he's referring to.
And just for those who know, 1 John says that Satan is the god of this world right now, that he's on a leash. The Lord, again, is the high priest. He is exercising his sovereign lordship, right? He is exercising his sovereign lordship, what he will and will not allow. But he's not the king yet because we're not in that millennial kingdom or state. So people, when they start getting their theology and eschatology wrong, as we've been talking about on our Daniel series, they start getting their ecclesiology wrong. What is the mission and function of the church? And now we start thinking, hey, we've got to take over. Not that we don't want to have Christian influence and be salt and light, but we're not interested in using our positions in government to create a theocracy because God, the Lord's in heaven, the Lord God's in heaven waiting for us to get it together, as Earl Polk and Bob Jones of the Kansas City Prophets in the 80s said. He's literally in heaven waiting for us to say, okay, we've built your kingdom, now come on down. Kind of like Bob Barker, come on down.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we are watching there J.D. Vance and Mike Johnson, and that's interesting. J.D. Vance, he really has been overshadowed by Marco Rubio, has he not?
It seems so. It seems so, exactly. You know, I wanted to show this verse from Revelation chapter 11 and 15. It says, and the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. This is where the kingdoms of the world are turned over to Christ. He doesn't have them at this time because the God of this world is still in control. This is a misapplication of Scripture. And in fact, I can't imagine these people even read the book of Revelation and take something like this into account. But nevertheless, this is where the kingdoms of the world are turned over to Jesus, and he's not king. We can't call him King Jesus over the nations of the world at this point.
No, at this point. And as you know, Daniel is the foundation for the book of Revelation. And we've already referenced Daniel 2, verse 44, that says that God's kingdom is represented as a big stone. And it says right there, not cut by human hands. A stone not cut by human hands. So we don't do it. It's a stone, and it crushes the other kingdoms that are in that Nebuchadnezzar vision that show Babylon, the Medo-Persian, Greece, Roman Empire, revived Roman Empire. So, I mean, the text is so clear that the Lord God is going to allow these things to happen, and then finally he will step into human history, bring his kingdom that crushes those, and that fits with what you just read in the book of Revelation. And isn't that what the Lord's Prayer says? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Not, Lord, help us build your kingdom in this earth.
Exactly.
But thy kingdom come.
Yep, exactly.
And people think we're just arguing semantics and splitting hairs here.
Not hardly.
No, because if you get this wrong, you're going to get your whole mission and purpose as a Christian and your local New Testament church all wrong, and you're going to be spending a lot of your money and time and influence trying to accomplish something that's not even going to happen. And the other thing, too, people start to get demoralized. Christians start to get demoralized because they think, well, it's not working out. What's going on? I thought we were supposed to be establishing the kingdom of God. No, we're to be salt and light. Duty is ours. The results belong to God. But in this church age, we are told it's going to get worse and worse. Be of good cheer. I have overcome. Be of good cheer. Don't be deceived, but keep going, right? And if you don't understand how the plan lays out, you're going to get demoralized and you're going to drop out. And sadly, I see a lot of people doing that. They get demoralized and they drop out because they've been told that the church is going to take over with this bad and wrong theology. And they become so demoralized, they stop being salt and light altogether.
Yep, that seems that way. I see a lot of clapping going on here.
And that is because this is Senator Cotton coming in with President Trump. There is President Trump. Let's dial in and listen to a little bit of the applause. We can continue adding in some commentary here as the president. There is our Congressman Tim Burchett talking to him right there from East Tennessee. He's been on the broadcast. John Thune, U.S. Senator, South Dakota. Tim Burchett's getting in quite a few remarks there.
He's matching my tie.
Well, you know, he sure is. I haven't thought about it. I would have done the red tie myself, but I guess I didn't get the memo. But I should have known, right? Folks, tonight, if you'd like to send in some of your comments as the president is speaking, feel free to send in some of your emails as the president starts speaking. Your thoughts, we'll read some of your emails on the air. You can respond. We'll be interrupting a little bit with some color commentaries. We see Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Barron Trump in the gallery. Somebody had a sign there. That guy is known for that kind of thing. I think he had to be taken out in the past. Because of disrupting one of Trump's speeches, but I don't know what it even said. We'll try to find that later. But if you guys would like to add in your comments, we'll read some of your emails on the air. As there's his Secretary of Defense Duffy there. There's Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee running for governor of Tennessee now. Brandon at worldviewtube.com. Send it over. Brandon, Brannon. Brandon at there's Chief Justice John Roberts. There you go. He's going down the line, shaking hands. This is going to be interesting to watch it tonight. Brannon, Brannon, Brannon at worldviewtube.com. If you want to send your comments, your statements about what's going on tonight, what the president's saying tonight, we'll mix in some of your comments, things he says that you like, which we'll be commenting on. I think he's going to say some things tonight we do really like and agree with. I really do. Maybe some things he says that concern you. Whatever it is, we'd like to mix some of your comments in. Brandon, Brannon, at worldviewtube.com. All right, let's dump in as Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, announces the president.